In this video, we will be completing Chapter 14. In Section 4, we'll be looking at the state and local level when it comes to collecting taxes known as revenue and how they spend that money. We have looked what the federal government does when collecting taxes, and we've also seen what their spending goes to. So in this section, we will find out what happens on the state and local level. Quick question though, why are state universities cheaper than private universities? As you begin to look for college, you will realize quickly that public universities seem to be a lot cheaper than a private university. And the reason behind that is that state taxes some of those state taxes go to public universities to help fund it. By lightening the burden for the students, they are able to provide those tax money known as revenue, which then makes it a lot cheaper for a student to attend. This is why if you're looking for an out-of-state public university, it's more expensive because your family, you have not been paying taxes into that state. And so they look at it and says, well, why should you benefit from it? You haven't contributed any tax money. So that's why it's more expensive for out-of-state students. State budgets. The whole idea behind this is that a budget is an estimation. Go back here, is an estimation of future revenue and expenses. And there's two parts to every state budget. There is an operating budget, which is your day-to-day cost, and then we have more of your capital budget. This is known as spending on major investments. So this would be the construction of a new highway, light rail, stadiums, more public universities, big campaign things that you would find for these projects. And then each state, 49 out of the 50 actually, have all passed a balanced amendment, which they've added to their state constitution, meaning that the collected taxes known as revenue must equal the amount of spending that's being done. And we'll look at some of the different things that money is spent on in these states. The one state that does not have a amendment for a balanced budget is actually Vermont. Now, where are the state taxes being spent? Education. We just covered that. Public universities, public schools, after-school programs, before-school programs. This is all state funded and locally funded. Public safety obviously is another one. Paying our state troopers in jails and prisons, keeping the community safe, providing that safety for all its citizens. We also see for highway system. The joke goes in Minnesota that Minnesota has two seasons, winter and construction. And the whole joke is talking about that as soon as the weather is nice in Minnesota, well, then we go to work on our highways and roads just because they are so trampled upon during the wintertime and are so brutally mangled sometimes. We also find for public welfare, for our state hospitals, clinics, unemployment compensation, food stamps. These are all designed for public welfare. Our arts and recreation. If you use any sidewalk, go to any park, public park, that is all part of it. So that is a major part of the spending that goes into a lot of this. So museums, libraries, art programs, music that is out there, that is all part of arts and recreation. And then we have the funding of the state government, which would be our administration, which we have three branches, our legislative, executive, and judicial. This picture here is representing our governor, which is Tim Walz for the state of Minnesota. And that room in the background is actually a famous room in the state capitol where the governor signs bills into laws. Now, if I was to ask you which branch would be the governor, who would you respond? The correct answer for that would actually be the executive. Legislative designed to create the legislation, the bill. It's the job of the governor or the president for the federal government to execute it, and judicial is make sure it stays within that state or federal constitution. Now, state tax revenue. What are the limits on state taxes? We cannot tax people bringing in, importing, or exporting from Wisconsin. So if we're importing from Wisconsin, we can't charge a tax across state borders. Sales among states. And then tax exempt status, not subject, we can't tax on that. So the state of Minnesota cannot start taxing churches or schools or anything else that's nonprofit. What are the different types of state taxes? Well, we have a sales tax. We have, according to this diagram, 6.875 is one of the state taxes. And as you look at surrounding states, they all have different taxes. And then there are certain products within those states that do not have any of that. In the state of Minnesota, we do not have a tax on clothing. Individual income tax is another way for collected taxes. Just as the federal government collects income tax and has different tax brackets, we find the same thing on the state level. And then we have corporate income taxes. Corporations pay a tax for being here. So an incentive a lot of states use sometimes is how can we bring in more jobs? They will lower the corporate income tax in order to incentivize companies, corporations to come to the state, which is going to provide more jobs. And then we have other state taxes, license fee, real property. I'll move the picture so you can see here. We also see personal property. These are all different state taxes. If you pay tabs for your car, that is a state tax that is to help and fund the different types of construction projects that we have. So all state. Now let's focus on the local level. Just as you had a federal level, a state level, now you have a local level. This is your township, the county you live in, and the school districts. We find here that the jobs and the money that's going to government spending revenue isn't some of the jobs. So law enforcement, your local police officer, public health, the elections, social services, this is all part of your local government taxes and where it's spent for the collection of this. Then property tax. Property tax is a huge opportunity for the local level to collect taxes, and then they use that. Generally, this is used to create a budget within your city. So if your city has created or has built a brand new public school, let's say it's an elementary school, that tax burden goes on the citizens who live in that county or live in that city. So if they begin constructing all these buildings, that means the state tax, the local tax is going to increase to pay for those big budget items that they're creating. We also have local government spending on residents and non-residents. For individuals that are not part of that, a lot of tourists go to the North Shore, so we have some tax on that, and then congestion tax too. So this is the end of Chapter 14, Section 4.